Well, thanks for joining the panel discussion, everyone. I'm Bessie from Blockworks, and I wanted to quickly introduce our panel members. I'll go around the table, starting with yourself, and then we can go into the questions. So please.
We introduce ourselves,
Yes.
yeah. Marko Vukulic, research scientist and Consensus Lab lead in Consensus Lab, which is part of Protocol Lab's research and engineering.
Hello, everyone. It's a little loud here, but my name is Molly McKinley. I lead the PL Endres team. That's short for engineering and research, working across IPFS, Filecoin, libp2p, and some of the cool stuff that Marco and others are pushing forward with breakthroughs in scalability, retrievability, and compute.
Hello, everyone. My name is Khalib. I am coming for you from Celestia, which is a part of Protocol Labs network. We are focusing on scaling blockchains through rollups and data availability. Excited to be here and talk about bigger and better blockchains.
Okay, so on the topic of bigger and better blockchains, what immediately comes to my mind is scalability, right? And like we were talking about before, what do you think in terms of scalability is currently going well, and what do you think are areas of improvement? And this is an open question to all the panelists.
I think what's going well is that we have a lot of different approaches being tested. What's not going so well is that, we are not scaling things at the level of planets. So even, I like to perceive Filecoin as a decentralized internet complement to Bitcoin, which is decentralized money, but you cannot really use money like Bitcoin for like 8 billion people on the planet. Like it's not a payment system that you can use on that scale. So even a payment system, I don't think would scale. So payment networks are not going to scale that well because payment channels, because you need to open and close a channel on L1, and that alone is not going to give you 8 billion people scalability. So we are still need to work to get there.
Agree with that having a lot of attention and experimentation in this space is one of the things absolutely to celebrate. Like, this is a top conversation for so many different parts of the ecosystem right now. You see so many layer twos working and grappling with that problem today. And then in terms of, those areas of opportunity, I really think as we, are trying to help Web3 cross the chasm and really merge the ecosystems between Web2 and Web3 so this can be accessible to so many more developers, we need to be thinking about, hey, what does their developer experience look like building around scalable decentralized systems today in Web2, and how do we enable that experience in Web3? So how do we have, truly scalable blockchains that can shard across many different regions, that can organize massive amounts of transactions? And I think that's what we should be shooting for.
I can agree more. And there was a lot of said here. And regarding scalability, it's like the most hottest topic right now on blockchains. Everyone wants to have their transactions as cheap as possible. We wanted to ensure that anyone can just transfer their value no matter where you are, so you don't have to pay like 100 Ethereum or $100 of worth of Ethereum when it's a bull market. Yeah, that's it. Like, and again, there's multiple way of approaching this problem that we will figure out today, and like we both present different approaches, and I think we'll share a little bit more about that later.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest, when we talk about scaling, a lot of people immediately think of L2s, right? So what do you think at this point in time are like some of the things that L2s are doing well, but what are the limitations that they might not be addressing?
So one of the challenges that we're trying to tackle at L2s with interplanetary consensus is the ability to on-demand scale L1s in a decentralized way. So when I'm saying this, so there are like two keywords, on demand and decentralized. So I think a bunch of like well-known efforts on Ethereum network are mostly like orchestrated around centralized components. So that's a limitation. And in others, like in Avalanche or Polygon, like it's not really on demand, right? So it's really like you need to reserve an L2, and it's like acts more as a stable L1, but of lesser security. And this is what we are trying to do with IPC. So basically, you just do in a permissionless way few operations on an L1, which gives you metadata basically for your L2 that you spawn in a decentralized way. So you can play, you can do stuff that's useful for a Filecoin ecosystem, but you can also play games. So you can play a poker game, chess game, backgammon game on a subnet. Just do it quickly, kill it, and basically really on-demand scaling. So in this gaming example, what I'm really giving you is an on-demand scaling.
Is it possible to run that subnet from your mobile phone, for example?
Not yet, but this would be ideal. So there is no real fundamental problem in doing that. So that would be the ultimate goal, actually.
Okay. The same actually is true for optimistic rollups, where the whole point is to run a like line, a so-called like line. Even from the Bitcoin, from the first white paper of Bitcoin, there is a concept of like line as a very cheap node that can join the network and verify its state and access everything in a very trust minimized manner. And we still need to, like, as you said, Ethereum right now struggles with the centralized infrastructure. Like we have Infura, we have Alchemy, and when you go to MetaMask, you have to trust those service providers, and that there's no like man in the middle who could also hijack and give you the wrong results and make you do whatever. So the ultimate goal should be a trust minimization so you can join the network with minimal resources required.
And that's one of the things Celestia is working on, right? Trying to take a whole chunk of that heaviness that comes in running a node on a blockchain and push that to additional decentralized systems.
Yes, so like we start from very lowest layer, which is a light node, we call it, and it's a fully featured node that joins the P2P network actually, and it's very similar to what IPFS does. So IPFS in itself is not a very heavy node. You can also try to run it in mobile phones, and we've seen Berti doing that in other teams. So in itself, you can join this P2P network and you do this sampling stuff. I won't get into detail why the sampling is needed, but it's required for trust minimized access to the network. And then additional on top of that, you kind of have a modules where you can inject a module of some other layer 2 from which you can access the state of that layer 2 in a trust minimized way. So you request, like, for example, a balance for your account, and together with the actual balance, you receive a proof, which can be a Merkle proof or validity proof, whatever, that proves that it's actually your balance and it's that amount. And for this, you don't need like to run a full node, to run the whole history of the chain. You just need a minimal resources.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to make an interesting... So it seems like Celestia is really useful in cases where you do have this longer-lived, heavier kind of like L2, and you're trying to pull heaviness out of that longer-lived network. I was curious with Marco around the subnet model, kind of how subnets can stay light and agile, and how having, maybe it's like a slightly complementary approach of having good interoperability between chains and between subnets actually also helps make each individual network lighter weight, and it's easier to move like the state and data around between networks, so that you don't have to have really, really heavy networks that large validators need to act in.
I guess, yes. I mean, the synergies between different approaches are always welcome. I would like to cast, like, if we are continuing, and also for the audience, maybe we can cast it in a use case and then like follow the use case and understand like how different approaches would cooperate, because like while you're talking in an abstract level, it's really difficult to pinpoint things.
Good point.
But yeah, so I agree. So our focus, our focus is not necessarily on building light clients the way we are scaling. So maybe there is an opportunity for like synergistic approach there. Yeah.
I'm going to bring this back a little bit to make it a little less technical for the audience as well. I'm curious, like, for the average DeFi user, what kind of like work is like being done in the scalability aspect that will benefit them? So at the end of the day, if I'm using an L2, why will it benefit me? And what's the like alternative to what I can use? And why is that better or worse?
No, for DeFi.
I was just going to, I mean, the very basic one is like in operating in an L2 context, you know, the thing that pushes transactions to that level, because you're having to trade off security of operating on L1. and it's, more chain bandwidth, reduced transaction costs, and for DeFi applications, that's kind of one of the main ones. You might also think for IPC, I know it's faster block times and faster finality is actually also a huge differentiator, especially for folks in Filecoin land who are like, 30-second Filecoin block time. Maybe I want this to have much, much faster, interaction speed with DeFi users. And if you think about having a global network that's actually, a decentralized network underpinning kind of your credit card or your transactions in supermarkets, like you'd want to have massive amounts of transaction volume operating extremely quickly so that you can, check out and get out of the grocery store as fast as possible. And there are regional aspects to those different networks, and those are currently regionally charted and not waiting for global, multi-second consensus across each of those transactions. And so I think some of the properties of IPC subnets are actually really interesting and appealing when thinking about kind of like a global DeFi network that you would want to be interacting with day in, day out for individual transactions.
So I agree. I mean, and beyond DeFi, I think Ali just an hour ago mentioned use cases that they are building on IPC, and they're precisely building it on layer 2s of Filecoin because of the latency that Molly mentioned. So I would say many use cases, at least in the Filecoin ecosystem, but also in others, right? So because of the block time and latencies that come, there will be not stealing any, L2s would not be stealing any traffic from L1 because it's just infeasible to use L1 for particular use case, right?
Regarding the DeFi, and scalability, how does it affect users? Everything is said, you just want to increase the throughput to decrease the price for the transactions. It's the only goal here, and as well as UX, L2 with the slower block times can give a much better UX. You can have soft confirmations that your action that you did has almost instant finality, and you can have a feedback instead of waiting for 15 seconds. I can't agree more on that.
I think there's maybe also your UX point is totally apt. The experience of enabling DeFi users to get be more deeply in control and engaged in L2 contexts. I know that was the whole premise of Base as an L2 on top of Ethereum. It's hey, maybe instead of utilizing centralized applications like Coinbase, can actually pull users from centralized exchanges into pure on-chain ownership if you have better scalability, some better properties there around what the user experience will look like when people take that step into more default ownership.
It's a good example because Coinbase is an L2 for many networks. It's just a centralized L2. So now you need to balance, right, between decentralization and other things.
I'm also curious, within, obviously we're all from different places in the world, but what kind of regulatory challenges is currently facing blockchain scalability? It doesn't necessarily have to be US based and anywhere. And what kind of things do you think can be achieved if that wasn't so much of a bottleneck or an issue?
Filecoin is not security.
I mean, I think one of the benefits of having more networks and making them easier to participate in from a UX perspective, it enables more users to get involved, more individuals to kind of become co-creators of these networks. So it's an opportunity to give people, stronger agency, help remove some of those points of centralization. So, you're scaling these systems and I think that can help in some ways in terms of having true decentralized governance, actually codifying more and more scalability factors. And so, but otherwise, I think maybe the challenge you come into with, many different groups trying to get that scalability is that when they do introduce kind of intermediary milestones that have kind of centralized control, that can be a risk factor that we want to avoid and decentralize as fast as possible, so that you can truly have network governed primitives building your network up.
Completely agree. This is why I tend to pick on centralized approaches, but it's really not related to security laws. I'm not from US or anything like that, but it's just from the decentralized purism. If you want, once you get stuck with the centralized components, it's really difficult to get out of it. Your product might be working, You may get things like you get customers and like you have this beast like sitting in it, right? So I prefer, and I guess Consensus Lab also prefers the approach where you decentralize all the components, and then maybe it impacts your time to market a bit, but then you don't have this like essentially legacy thing that you need to replace eventually.
I think I'm also curious about like what is the end goal that we're trying to achieve here? We're saying like bigger, better blockchains. What is a bigger, better blockchain? What kind of end goal do you envision? And how do you think the different kinds of scalability projects can work together to kind of achieve that as well?
Want me to start? Okay. So Celestia is sort of an endgame, in my opinion, and I'll try to explain why. So the light clients that I already talked about is so powerful that everyone in this world, like all the billions of people, may run their light nodes in their phone to access the network trustlessly, to have an access to what Web 2 provides right now, but in the Web 3 world, specifically social network. Imagine if like you had some sort of like decentralized marketing systems, or you can have like all this AdSense that YouTube provides through your phone. You'd create your content and you receive the money for that content in a verifiable manner through your phone without trusting anyone. This is an end game for me, where the sovereignty in your pockets.
One of the things I'm really excited about, coming from the Filecoin ecosystem and thinking about all of the additional tools and applications you want to bring to the data you've stored in Filecoin, is really enabling many, many different tools and applications to come into this ecosystem, have the scalability that they expect from, Web 2 level, building their application on, AWS, S3, EC2. But then they also want the space to have many different approaches thrive, but be able to interoperate with each other seamlessly. And so I'm really excited for many different compute networks coming to Filecoin, many different retrievability networks, many different applications that want to make use of these tools and pipeline between different L2s, different networks, and for each of those to also embed their own scalability, right? If you, we start playing Minecraft on top of one of these networks, like Minecraft is huge. There are so many different like local servers that different sub-communities join. Like I want infrastructure that will power Minecraft built on the blockchain, will power YouTube built on the blockchain, and those need to be able to scale massively. And they also don't want to be in a silo. They don't want to be kind of like their own network in a corner. They want to be massively inter-networked with being able to do live peer for video processing, being able to use Filecoin for large video storage, being able to work with DeFi applications that want to run interesting compute over those different video outputs, machine learning algorithms, all sorts of interesting things. And so a vision where we can utilize these primitives and have the scalability and interoperability so that each layer can rescale. That's what I think sounds really exciting.
I guess for me, the end game is like you buy some open source hardware, right? So that you can assemble yourself from open or like from off the shelf components. And then basically you have like a lightweight but very secure L1. And I have a candidate, I won't name it, but basically you synchronize this from scratch. And based on this, like you have some data points. So basically like CIDs on this L1, which you use to bootstrap the rest of your decentralized applications. And if you, of course, go to Filecoin to pick up the actual data that pertains to these CIDs. And by this, like you're constructing from scratch, like currently, if you install operating systems, of course, like in Linux is better, but like, depending on a distro, you're going to, again, to centralized servers and like to kind of have a decentralized bootstrap of the whole machine that you hold in your pocket or on your lap, which gives you access to decentralized payments, decentralized money, and decentralized internet. Once we are there, I think we are good, but like there's some work to do.
I do know, I think we only have we're short on time, so I wanted to see if any of the audience members had any questions I'm gonna look around. No one? No questions? Okay, I'll ask the final question. I'm curious. So we've all talked about like the end game and like what you kind of envision. What are we currently doing right now in each of your teams, like to get there? And what, yeah, like what more do you have to do?
Adoption, like to get there, we need to think of more and better ideas of how can we utilize this Web3 stack. So far, we have DeFi, which was the most successful so far. After DeFi, maybe decentralized social, who knows? Maybe it will be metaverse or whatever, but we just need to think about how we can use those primitives that Web3 provides for new great ideas to make the world better. I would say like this. It's very high level, very like philosophical, but
I was part of the group who helped launch the EVM runtime into Filecoin called FVM or FEVM. And so that layer of programmability was kind of a first step for Filecoin in terms of unlocking a lot of ability to run interesting smart contracts, programmability layers over data. And now I'm really interested to see more people launching compute networks, other networks that can scale within that space. I think we, with some of the work that Marco's doing with IPC and some of the other solutions coming out around being able to offload data into Filecoin storage, which is I think a great opportunity for all of us from a scalability perspective to lighten the load of long-term snapshots or Genesis archival history for all of these networks. I think that and utilizing the programmability of FVM to start doing that across the entire blockchain space. I mean, for Filecoin as well, please, because I know a number of our node operators are super excited about that. Solana's actually already doing it. So I'm really excited to see more networks leaning into programmable storage, utilizing Filecoin as a storage layer for a lot of our chain history, and then also utilizing some of the new kind of programmability hooks to also scale networks. And hopefully as we do that, we find opportunities for even more modularity. Celestia's been doing an awesome job of that. Thinking about how we build using FVM, putting more into those runtimes so nodes can get lighter and lighter. The work of kind of operating a blockchain or spinning a new one up from scratch can be even more lightweight or kind of like a transient as Marco was describing.
I would agree. So like adoption and UX, and like we need use cases that are interesting to people, so more people flock to, like they have a reason other than DeFi and maybe trading coins, right? Some more fundamental reason like that fulfills their needs. Like gaming is a nice example. I mean, there are like a few people who don't like gaming of some sort. Like if you can provide nice experience in the gaming world, like many people will come, right? And then some people might stay, and then you grow the ecosystems.
Well, I think that's time for us. So thank you guys all so much for your time, and I'll pass it on to the next speaker.